Housing Authority in the transfer process, responsibilities of the family, that's you guys, and the responsibilities of the owner throughout this transfer process. We're going to talk a little bit about GoSection8.com, which is a great resource of starting to look for a place. I know we had some questions about lists already. That's a good website to go to if you're not sure where you want to start your search. We're going to talk a little bit about housing fair. That's something we do occasionally to connect you with available units and landlords who have units that are available to rent. And then, of course, you're going to hold all your questions for now, but we're going to have a little question and answer session if you have anything at the end. All right, some program requirements for the transfer process. First of all, you, as a family on the Section 8 program, must be in good standing with your current owner. Okay, so that means you got to be, your rent's got to be paid up. You can't owe any past due rent. Okay, and you can't really owe for any damages as well. And if your lease hasn't ended, if you're in the middle of a lease, the landlord has the right to keep you in that lease. Okay. Also, this means you have to put in a proper notice. So sometimes that's a 30-day notice, and sometimes that's a 60-day notice. You need to make sure and check your lease for the notice date that you have to give, or your landlord might be able to tell you. Also, the unit you want to move into must qualify as an eligible unit by passing a housing quality standard inspection, and the rent charged by the new owner must be reasonable. We'll talk about that in a minute. And the owner must be an eligible owner, approvable by DHA with no conflicts of interest. The responsibilities of Durham Housing Authority in this process are we're going to go out and do an inspection. So before you move into any unit, or before we start making payments for a unit, it has to pass inspection. So we're going to go out and make sure the unit you want to live in is decent, safe, and sanitary. If it's not those things, then we're going to fail the unit, and the landlord's going to have to address those problems if you want to move into that unit. And this is determined by HUD's housing quality standards or some state and other local standards. We also go by the Durham City Housing Code a lot of times as well with what we look for in an inspection. Inspections are conducted at initial move-ins, which this is what you'll be doing if you're moving, or, of course, as you all know, annually. You come out at least once a year to inspect your unit. Once the request for tenancy approval, which we'll talk about here at the end of the class, is received, the owner is going to be notified via mail and more than likely also by telephone of when the inspector is going to come out and do your inspection. That's really between the inspector and the landlord. They'll get on the same page and go out and inspect the unit for you. Also, DHA has to approve the lease, and it's got to contain the following things for us to be able to approve the lease and let you move into that unit and make payments to the owner. It's got to have the names of the owner and the tenant, of course. It's also got to have the unit address. It's got to have the term of the lease, which is how long it's running. So what date does it start and what date does it end? And then, of course, the monthly rent amount, what they're requesting for their unit. And then the specification of utilities and appliances to be supplied by the owner, and what utilities you'll be paying, and maybe what appliances that you're required to provide as well. The initial term of the lease must be at least 1 year. DHA will not approve an initial lease of less than 1 year. Okay, so wherever you go, you got to have to stay there at least a year. Basically, with that staying. Okay, because it's very hard to break a lease, and a lot of times landlords aren't going to let you out of a lease. So wherever you're moving to, remember, you're going to be there for more than likely at least a year. And DHA also has a policy to where we can limit your elective moves once per year. So a lot of times, like I said, you're going to have to stay there for a year. So make sure it's a unit that you want to live in for a year. Make sure that it's someplace that you feel comfortable with, that the neighborhood is someplace you feel comfortable with. Go by during the day and at night maybe to check out the neighborhood, because we have lots of people that get into houses and then all of a sudden they're uncomfortable in their unit, and there's not a whole lot we can do for them. So just be certain that that's where you want to live. Also make sure that the landlord is someone that you feel like you can do business with for a year. Okay, if you're getting some bad vibes from the landlord, it may not be a good idea to enter a 1-year contract with a person if you're not sure you're going to be able to cooperate with them and to relate with them or whatever. So just be aware of that. It's a year long, and a year can be a long time. So Rent reasonableness, this is where we compare the unit you want to move into to units around in the same area within 2 miles based on comparable data. So we're going to, come on in guys, you're all right. Have a seat next to a folder so that you have all the good information we have.
Next to a folder?
Yes, please. Or you can grab a folder and find some place to sit. What we do for rent reasonableness is we're just going to compare your unit to other units like it in the same area. Okay, and if for some reason the rent of the unit you want to rent is higher than all the units around it that are just like it, then we're going to have to ask the owner to lower the rent, because DHA is not going to make a payment to an owner that's above all the rents in that same area. We're not going to pay more for a unit if it doesn't warrant it. Okay. So if they won't lower it to the reasonable amount, then you're going to have to look for another place. Now, if they do lower it, then we're all good and we can continue the